Welcome to our panel. And thank you all for being here. Quite a nice crowd, actually, this morning. So our topic is, well, the title is quite long. I will not go into it. But let me try and introduce our panelists, please. Go ahead.
My name is Kristina Vranjić. I'm the head of compliance department for new markets. I'm leading a team of people who are mainly specialized for targeting new jurisdictions, new acquisition of the new application licenses, and basically new markets entry. We are coming from Superbet, mainly known as the leading operator in Romania, rapidly growing operator in Poland, and operator which is open to entry of the new markets.
Yeah. I'm Dr. Dalli. I am a lawyer by profession, but I am also the CEO of an online casino group called L&L Europe. And as a Man United fan, I'm in a complicated relationship with Cristiano Ronaldo.
Okay.
Good morning. My name is Perrygrove. I'm the Chief Risk Officer of Kwiff, an operator that covers multiple markets, including the UK. 15 years in the gaming sector, starting off in the UK Gambling Commission and then moving over into the operator side.
My name is Max Owen. I work for ID Now. I'm a sales manager for ID Now. ID Now provide KYC document verification solutions to operators across the world generally.
Very well. So basically, we have quite a diverse panel coming from different stakeholders in the industry. And I would like to start with Chris. As you introduce yourself, a lawyer by profession and CEO, quite a unique position, or I doubt there are a lot of you.
There's a few more.
How do you manage this dual role in reality when you are CEO with a legal and compliance background? How you look at this challenge in approaching the compliance and legal aspects of our business?
So basically, I cannot take any credit for tackling that challenge myself, but the credit all goes to the owner of my company who gave me the job, because he doesn't seem like he is, but he's quite the visionary in this space. He saw the regulation coming in. He saw the issues that a business would have to tackle from an operational perspective. He understood that obviously the commercial side will always remain important for a business, and that is the CEO hat that I always have to keep on. But he also understood that he was not fit to take the company to where it needs to go in the regulated markets. So our main markets are the UK, the MGA, and Sweden. As all of you know, there's quite a few obligations that come with that. And he, I would say, tricked me into a very nice role as heading up a gaming company. And then he put me in a position knowing full well that I would make sure that the company would be fully compliant with all the obligations we need to do. The challenges, I think, that you face, that you talk about, the most important one, and if I have to say one thing here and then I can leave, it's this. It's that there is a misconception between operators and everyone in the industry to take the easy way out to say that regulation means no revenue. It is not the case. It is the incorrect or a lazy interpretation and implementation of how compliance needs to work within an operation that actually will lead to an additional loss of revenue than you actually need to incur. The actual obligations that are put in place does not necessitate a destruction of a business. But if you're not sure about what you're doing, and if you do not seek the correct legal help, and you half-ass it, you are endangering your business.
Sure, but to be able to do that, you need obviously either an in-house counsel who is doing pretty much the job, or external counsel. How would you manage to combine both as a B2C, considering as well that when you're talking about regulatory compliance, we're not just talking about gaming and the compliance coming from the MJ, but we have to look at GDPR, we have to look at AML requirements.
So in my own particular experience, I used to be a gambling consultant and a commercial lawyer. And I continue, even though I am the CEO, I continue to hold maybe a bit of pride that I believe that no one will look at my commercial agreements in the same way that I would for my own purposes, and that will give me the attention that I need for myself. However, obviously, once I delve into a topic or a market which I don't know, I immediately seek outside counsel. And at that point, I have to understand the limitations of my own background, a Maltese lawyer with commercial experience in Maltese law and some international law, and understand that in some other jurisdictions, my interpretation of something might be completely incorrect. So you have to seek external counsel, and as you mentioned, in-house counsel. If I cannot be efficient myself, then that is the time when I have to understand that you need to delegate, and you need to understand that you bring on work and you train them into how you are doing things yourself.
Kristina, leading from this, basically, you represent the team, the compliance team responsible for new markets, and that's exactly what Chris introduced us here. How do you approach? How would you approach when you come into entering a new market from this particular challenge of actually needing to advise the business on a way forward, but at the end of the day, entering a new market, which to a certain extent is a little bit unknown?
Basically, when you are leading a team, which is not a big team, of people who are specialized for entry into the new markets, and the team of people who are not always associated with the geographical territories that you're targeting, it's inevitable to have a near-sourced compliance or the legal function, basically local advisor here. So that would be our approach whenever we have gaps in terms of regulatory documents, especially if there is no available regulation on the regulatory sites which are translatable into the familiar or understandable language. Then we definitely use the outsourced compliance function here to help us to gather all requirements for that specific markets. Usually we don't have time to hire every time somebody else when we are entering new markets, basically because you need to go through exhausting processes of interviews. You don't know whether you'll get the person with a satisfying level of seniority, and in the end you can end up with having nobody for that specific market. So basically, with help of local advisors, we are actually dealing with these gaps. Besides that, when you get the license finally, or you are in the middle of the application process, you need to know which kind of documentation you need to prepare for that market. So basically, you can have a set of internal documents of your own, applicable to, let's say, another or two other markets, but you never know whether they are going to be applicable for the third market. So basically, with help of the local advisor, you can have them adjusted. They are not going to write your documents, but they are going to guide you to have the accurate documents. Also, when you enter the new market, you have, and this is your first time or first entry, you have no relationship with the regulator, basically non-relationship, especially that's the case on the smaller markets who actually have the regulators who are strictly limited to their own language barriers, and they don't want to speak with the operators coming from outside and the operators' personnel, so you definitely need a representative from that territory to help you with the introduction, to help you with the communication, and to build a trustful relationship. On the other side, there are some gaps that cannot be removed so easy. So basically, even though if you're following everything, or maybe the most of the things by the book or what has been advised from a side, that doesn't necessarily always mean that you'll meet the regulator's approval. So basically, the gap here which remains is the responsibility, which is still yours. You cannot transfer the responsibility to local advisors to somebody who is outsourced for your needs. Also, sometimes the advice coming from a side will not meet what business wants and business desires. So basically, then your internal compliance team or internal legal team has to come up with a final verdict and try to find the best way for both sides. So mainly to help the business to produce the revenue and still not to challenge any compliance issues.
But is it, one of the points that you also mentioned was the possibility of recruiting someone. It takes time to actually recruit someone to fill the role when entering a new market. I think the additional challenge to that is especially when the market itself is new, and not just new for you, but also for the regulator. Ian, I was going to address this question to you.
Yeah, it makes sense.
In your experience, looking at entering into markets, this problem of facing a new jurisdiction with a new regulatory framework, how would an operator have to deal with this?
Yeah, like there are a range of new markets appearing in the last few years. By that I mean regulated markets, and that's a good thing. Businesses like the confidence of regulation. In some capacities, investors like it. They like the stability of it. Stability, obviously not UK. Let's not put that in the stable situation at the moment. But the regulated structure there, it develops, it grows, it builds. And to get experience in it, you need to have lived it a little bit. And you're right, it's not just us as operators living that experience, but the regulator themselves. You know, where did that regulator come from? What is their aim? What is their hope? What are their political masters? You know, no one knows that on day one of launch. We can take some good connections. We hope there's a role in the nearsourcing and the outsourcing functions, that the connections at a political level, at a formation level of a regulator, you know, have helped guide a sensible strategy that we can all get close to and collaborate with. And we've seen that's not always the case. Some regulators either like to put their stamp on it, they like to come in a bit aggressive at the beginning. They've shook us up as an industry, and maybe rightly so, to make sure we respect their jurisdiction where probably, most likely, we were operating previously without clear guidance and regulation. And so we come to, whether you're outsourcing it or whether you're trying to bring it in, where you get that experience from if it doesn't exist. And we're sort of all in it together. And if you were lucky enough to have someone in that jurisdiction, that becomes a jurisdiction that has knowledge of it, maybe they have the language skills, maybe they've got a history in the sector, then it becomes a job seekers market. It's very competitive then to drag someone away to have that. So, like, quickly on nearsourcing, for me, my understanding is locating close to what you need, you know, the resources you need. And Malta's great for that, I think, because it has a hub. I mean, we're literally sat in a bunch of experience and expertise and resellers and stuff. When you have a new market, Ontario, does that exist? Can we nearsource there? Probably not. And as we already said, outsourcing becomes much more difficult when you're maybe not confident. And it was already mentioned, you're the operator, it's your license. You don't want to be the first one to get a sanction if you can help it. You don't want to lose that license because it took you a long time to get it. So whose advice do you really trust? That's, you know, a huge question, and there isn't a perfect answer.
No, I agree. I think the challenge there remains the fact that with a new jurisdiction, even most probably the regulator is without the necessary experience to deal with certain requests and certain operators' submissions. At the end of the day, sometimes, even though we have a market opening, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're happy that you are there. We just heard from the Netherlands just a few panels before us, where there is the sudden blockage of advertising. I mean, that's definitely something that could have been maybe discussed with the industry. I'll go down to Max. Max comes from a different stakeholder in the industry. Yeah. But of course, being a ID verification company, you have to deal with the regulations as well, and you need to see how to be able to meet the requirements.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, a lot of the B2C guys quite often come to us looking for best practice, approach, advice, which is quite tough. I mean, yeah, I feel for the guys. They've obviously got the regulators that just not giving tons of advice, and then you have to go to lawyers, and then sometimes they can be translating it 3 or 4 times, and then you're thinking, what's the best approach here? You have the KYC regulations. If I just talk about KYC and AML, you have the KYC regulations, then you obviously have overarching AML legislation, which quite often contradicts it. which is the same for the Netherlands, Germany, etc. I mean, our winning combination for us, we have in-house counsel, and then we obviously lean on lawyers like WH Partners, Melchers, etc. And then also we have native speakers. ID Now is truly sort of global company. We have presences in Singapore, Asia, UAE, North America, Europe, etc. So we have native speakers in a lot of markets, which on top of that helps us obviously with giving kind of best practice advice once we've translated the laws. But yeah, there is no best approach for operators, and I mean, you've got to have a combination of kind of outsourcing and then also have in-house counsel and then do the best you can, you know, and lean on guys like us, which a lot of operators are doing now. They're coming to us and kind of seeing what the best approach is, what other operators are doing in particular, especially new markets, like I said, the Dutch market, Ontario, etc. So yeah, that's the probably best approach. Is the winning combination is probably finding a bit of everything, you know. But then that's also very expensive, and we know that because we're getting funding constantly, because we're having to keep up with identity service provider legislation, as well as KYC, new market regulations, making sure we can give the best advice as well to operators. It's costly, but it has to be done, you know. And like Chris said, you've got to spend the money, and then ultimately you'll get the return on these highly regulated new markets. But yeah, you just have to invest the money. Where that comes from is sometimes difficult.
No, for sure. I think, but from what I get from the discussion at the end of the day is that the challenge is not just when entering new market, but also managing the current markets that you are in, but especially when trying to balance the recruitment side with the outsourcing side, the expenses involved. At the end of the day, however, is it really a job seekers market? I open it for any one of you to answer this.
I think Ian touched upon it already, to be honest. It is a job seekers market for the right candidate. It is impressive how many candidates there are out there who have little to no experience, but they have the mindset that they know it all. And that's okay to have that ambition and to have that understanding and drive to get to somewhere, but to think that you could single-handedly lead a company's ambitions from a compliance perspective in a jurisdiction and not actually being fully cognizant of all the risks is very dangerous for both the individual and the company. I do think, however, that if on the operator side you do have the knowledge of what is required and you see that in a candidate, and there's multiple companies who have that knowledge on the recruitment side, then that candidate has his choice of top positions.
So at the end of the day, it also goes down back to education within the company, especially with the HR team who is recruiting, to identify the right candidate. Because as you said, there are candidates, but not necessarily the right one for the right role.
Well, I think it's bigger than that. It's bigger than the HR team. It's bigger than the company. It's our sector, right? We're in it for a long time. You know, I refer fondly to Malta. You know, it needs these resources to continue to thrive and be our homes and be successful. So it's incumbent upon us to keep that going, to keep that refreshed. And obviously, the challenge, if it's a very small pool of individuals, particularly a small pool of advisors, consultants, schools or training authorities, teaching a wide pool of people the same thing, you're going to get sort of the same results. So having different exposure, having the permission of your backers, your funders to explore a little bit, to attempt new things, to maybe use the outsourcing function to test it. But yeah, we need to, as a group of individuals, help those challenge us. Recruitment's fantastic. It brings in excitement, and yes, there's a lot of confidence in this sector. You go downstairs, and there'll be 1,000 people trying to sell you something. It's their job. They're passionate about it. we're here, in a way, to sit here to sell a little bit. We've got our names as branding. I want to talk about Kwiff and how we supercharge betting. Boom, do some sales, keep my CEO happy. We're all selling something, and you're right. We need someone that's got that interest in doing it and has that confidence to do that, and we can give them, together a framework to try and build that knowledge so that we're not as reliant on outsourcing, because outsourcing partners, they need the same pool of people. They need the same intelligence, the same spark. So we're competing almost with each other. And you can see that go backwards and forwards, can't you, across third parties, consultants, lawyers, coming in-house counsel, going back to partnerships, or, that keeps the industry alive and hopefully moves those thoughts around and those approaches around and challenges businesses.
Yep. If I could just add on to that,
sure.
We've discussed a lot about what we do on the entity side, on the gaming side, the licensees, the suppliers, whatever. There is a lot that needs to be done on the authority side and the institution side as well. It is not simply just because it's an authority, it means that they're all-knowing and infallible and everything. It's very, very important that even from an authority perspective, they maintain the need to educate, train, and be at their best. And not just be lured by political, like the theme of the day, or just look to be seen to be doing something that on the face of it looks right. But with proper knowledge and training, we can actually start to have proper collaboration like the previous panel was talking about. Because if an authority is just firing from the hip because they are not sure how to tackle this, then it will only lead to a behavior where operators will just hide whatever they're doing from an authority rather than collaborate. I give you an example ourselves, where we had entered Swedish market. Like you mentioned before, no one was sure about what the other party was doing. With experience, at least the limited experience I had, it was always a case of reach out to the regulator, see what they want, see what you can give them, and just satisfy their needs. They had no communication at the time. At some point, we had one situation where we changed a supplier for a regulatory requirement, and from a technical perspective, and no one could have detected this, only we knew, it was lacking. There was a delay of 30 to 45 seconds upon registration. No players ever got harmed. We were immediately voluntarily, we went transparent to the authority, and the authority's only response was a €60,000 fine. Now, there was no basis for it, there was no knowledge, there was no discussion, there was no nothing. So it was just, if the only lesson I got from that was, don't speak to the authority. If there's something like that, fix it, and if no one says anything, then it's fine. And that shouldn't be the lesson. The lesson should be, these are the rules, and if we follow all the rules, then there is a common good that is going to be achieved. But that's why I talk about the knowledge that also needs to be on the side of the authority.
I think we need some transparency in those rules a lot of the time, don't we? I mean, there's often a lot of confusion in regulation or legislation, even those that are super well established or have been around for a long time. Like many of us operate in the UK and have challenges with it. There are, remits we have on our shoulders. The interpretation of a regulation is almost the person opposite you. The enforcement individuals that are checking what you're doing, auditing you, the advisory council. You can have 12 different opinions upon it, and we look towards improvements in that area. So having that flexible mindset, that ability to review the market, maybe take bits of best practice from other regulations, to grow, as a team, internally, externally, that point of collaboration again.
I have to say, from the perspective of the in-house compliance team, that the combination of both internal and external counsel is the best, actually, solution. First of all, it removes a lot of burden from your internal team, especially if you're talking about a small team, and increases the level of efficiency of your internal team, and definitely increases the level of confidence within your internal team, especially if they are not very familiar with the market, which is new for them. So basically, following somebody else's advices, the specialized person for that section, the specialized person for that particular market, can actually increase the level of confidence that they are actually acting by the book, playing right, and that they will not target any compliance issues.
I think we actually ran out of time. So thank you, everyone, for joining us on this panel. Join me in a round of applause for our interesting discussion.